So pretty much it's a guesswork. As a nutritionist, like when I do podcasts or like interviews about my work in the professional cycling, I will say, like we calculate everything very precisely up to the gram, because we have these power meters and we can very accurately determine the energy use on the bike and outside the bike, and we can get like up to a certain each calorie. And in a way, this is just like me pretending that I know stuff and others don't, but the actual reality is that, well, things are not as they seem to be, because I was just before this podcast, I actually went out and like did some calculations to basically be able to demonstrate this point, which I've done quite a few times and I always come to the same conclusion, which we'll come to later. But basically, let's say that we have a power meter during the training session. We assume that power meter is actually displaying the correct values, which very often it isn't. So we have an error of plus minus 1%, at least plus minus 1%. And then if we now try to convert this into energy expenditure, and this is what Garmin, Wahoo, Strava, and all those apps are doing, what you need to then do is basically assume a certain factor of efficiency. So we know that when we exercise, not all of the energy we turn over goes into the mechanical work. A lot of goes into the heat. So when we measure power and then calculate the amount of work we produce in an hour or do in an hour with the parameters, then we need to figure out what is the heat production basically. And the heat production can be anything between 80 probably and 75%. So we get to efficiency of 20 to 25%. Okay. So I said to ChatGPT, because it was the easiest thing to do, and I tried the calculations because I would get to the same conclusion. And I asked him, let's say that during a training session, I perform or I do 3,500 kilojoules of work, which is kind of a long training session for a relatively highly trained person. How many kilocalories would I expend if my efficiency was 20, 23, and 25%? So usually what I think Garmin would probably do, and I'm not sure about others, but usually they just assume that 3,500 kilojoules equals 3,500 kilocalories. And this comes out from the fact that if you do all these conversions, this would be efficiency of 24%. And this is what we nutritionists usually use when we calculate things, because it's the easier thing, because it's just like equals, just you change the units. But there is some more maths behind it, but it just happens to be the same. But anyway, so for 20% efficiency, for 3,500 kilojoules of work, we get 4,182 kilocalories. And that for 25% efficiency, we only get 3,346 calories. So we get a difference of almost 800 kilocalories.
It's quite a lot.
What's the efficiency of each individual? Well, it can be anything between 20 and 24% or 25%. And I've seen both in the lab. And you can measure this in the lab, but now use these numbers outside when the bike is not stable, like straight, but it's actually moving side to side. And probably this will change again. And it will probably change when you do an effort, or you go just easy pace, or when you're fatigued and non-fatigued. So pretty much it's a guesswork. And this is just the start, because then what about the rest of the day? How much do you actually expend the rest of the day? How much does the recovery take? I have no idea. I can use some equations that are out there in the literature. They're all very inaccurate and just like very crude predictions. I can also even like go and do the doubly labeled water method, which some studies claim to have done, and came up with some numbers. And I can say that even that method is completely flawed if you don't know certain metabolism parameters that they don't know. So basically, the answer is we have absolutely no idea how accurate they are, which is more accurate than the other. And working with athletes, I found out that I need to use different ways of calculating the numbers to basically maintain the energy balance, because the one equation or one way of doing it would make someone gain weight, and the same way would make someone completely and every day being hungry. So it's a lot of guesswork.